Are self-doubt and fear holding you back from pursuing your creative dreams? Maybe you're thinking about starting a business or chasing a lifelong passion or writing a novel. Well, I've got an author I'd like you to meet whose book and insights will help you push past uncertainty and step into your creative power. Stick around because you're not only going to learn more about the book and the writing journey this author took to create it, if you listen real carefully, you'll find a few ways to conquer your doubts.
Welcome to A Book Finds You podcast. This week's guest is Amy Bernstein. Join us as she shares the inspiration behind her book, along with her writing process, routines, and challenges. And now, here's your host, best-selling author, Rob Jolles.
Today's guest, Amy L. Bernstein, is a multi-genre author, book coach, and former award-winning journalist. She writes stories that let readers feel while making them think. Her latest book is Wrangling the Doubt Monster, Fighting Fears, Finding Inspiration, a source of encouragement for all self-doubting creatives. Happy to have you with us and welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much, Rob. I'm really glad to be here with you.
Excellent. And we got it. Today it's a little bit rainy, a little bit windy, so it's a great day for a podcast.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, you know the title of the show, and so I'd love to hear how the book found you, because I know you didn't find that book. It came after you.
You are so right about that. What a great insight. And I think only a fellow writer could know how that works. Wrangling the Doubt Monster must have been brewing inside of me for a really long time. And, I am someone who has been filled with doubts about my ability to achieve anything that I dreamed about for such a long time. And I think I just reached a point where I was learning how to come to grips with that and to really own it and to kind of put it to work for me instead of having it rule me. And I got to say, this book came pouring out over a series of months as something that I absolutely had to get outside of me. And I was telling myself my own doubt story while knowing that I really wanted to share this story with creative people around the world because I was having conversations with so many writers and artists who would bring up on their own the fact that they were full of doubt. And I thought, well, there is something here and I'm going to wrestle with it.
Yeah, it usually chases us down. Even when I was reading your intro, I saw the word self-doubting creatives that you put together. And I thought, what an interesting three words, because the two go with the other one. It's when you're creative, I think you're always a little bit self-doubting. If you're not creative, you probably don't have to worry about it so much. But I think one kind of follows the other.
Yes, and I also would argue that really everyone's creative, even though when I was writing the book, I was first really thinking about creative people in a very traditional sense. Those of us who write or maybe make some other kind of art. We paint or we work with textiles or something along those lines, or maybe we sculpt or something, fine arts. But I've really come to recognize and embrace that really everyone is creative. Everyone has that inner sort of creativity. People who are starting up companies or launching new companies are incredibly creative. And so self-doubt is something that is so deeply ingrained in all of us, almost no matter what our endeavors are. And we really do have to learn how to manage that and cope with it, even if we can never totally banish it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as an entrepreneur myself, I'm 33 years in business on my own. I know that the more creative I get, the more voices I hear in my head. But I find it kind of joyous as long as there isn't too much on the line to kind of stay with that instinct, just follow that path. But then again, I've been at it for a while, so I've gotten more comfortable with it.
Yes, we can get comfortable with it, but it's sort of like a volcano, and every once in a while this thing's dormant, and then suddenly, there's lots of hot bubbles and things roiling near the top, and before you know it, there's like lava spewing up over the rim, and that's what can happen with doubts. So we think we've got it tamed or under control, and then boy, it can hit us like a ton of bricks and just kind of call us up short.
Yeah, well, that's true. And entrepreneurs in particular, you're always a couple months away from a potential
Yep.
change. I mean, we had this thing called a pandemic. Who saw that coming? So
Hmm.
things like that, we never can get too comfortable. So let's dive in there. Normally, I launch right into the writing process, but I wanted to stay here for a minute more with you.
Hmm.
And because I figured, why not, go over a couple of ideas that you have maybe to conquer some of that doubt. And I know
Right.
that's a big question. Let's read the book and get there. But if you had almost an elevator pitch, if you're going up and down an elevator, I'll give you two trips up and down. Uh, but if you were going up and down in an elevator, what would you lean over and tell somebody who's struggling with this?
Yes, there definitely are some strategies that people can adopt. One of them is, I think it always starts with giving yourself permission to try something and to falter and to try again. Sometimes we're afraid to start or take on a big project or pursue a really big goal or vision because we're already assuming that we'll fail or that we just won't get where we think we need to go in the end. So you must give yourself permission to make the attempt, understanding that there will be bumps and hiccups along the way, and that's okay. And it's actually part of the process and it's actually part of the journey as you put yourself kind of on the path or on the way to something bigger and better for you. So it does start with really giving yourself permission to be open to try instead of just stopping yourself short. Another thing that I really like to remind people about is how important it is to surround ourselves with allies and to distance ourselves from adversaries. When you are tackling something really big, you need to be in community with people who are going to support and encourage you and really kind of lift you up, even if you struggle along the way, as opposed to all those otherwise lovely families, friends, and colleagues who are really kind of ready to doubt you themselves, tear you down a little, make you question what you're doing, think you're insane. That's not who you want to be listening to when you're taking on a really big project. You really want to make sure, not that you should surround yourself with only yes people, but you do want to be in an environment where you're going to feel encouraged and supported to take those risks. So those are two things right there.
Okay. And let's aim the question at you a little bit, just for a moment. So you're getting ready. This book is sort of pursuing you, but sometimes we doubt whether an idea like that is worth pursuing. So how did you manage your own personal doubt with this book that was chomping at your heels?
Very fair question. And I would say that I do laugh at myself all the time about how much doubt I still have about trying to make this book really widely read and kind of really get the notice that, of course, I think it deserves. So a lot of my doubt is rising to the top as this book kind of gets out into the world. It is out in the world. It was published in January. When I was writing, I was so committed to what I wanted to say. I wasn't worrying about any of that. And because I'm a nonfiction book coach and I have some expertise in writing book proposals, I was pretty confident in the book proposal that I put together to shop the book. And so that's not really where the doubts came out strongly, which is interesting because other things I write, absolutely lots of doubt about, like a novel. Is this anything? Is this really stupid? Is it boring? Am I, telling the story wrong? All those things, right? But this book, I wasn't really so much worrying about the material so much as how do I just make sure that I get this into the hands of as many people as possible? And am I capable of doing that? And that's where sort of the doubt around being able to break through and get the message out really comes strongly forward. At least I'm very aware of it. I can say that much. I try to walk the walk and talk the talk.
Well, I actually, as a person who's never written a fictional book, I only write business books. I personally find the business books a little bit easier to write because I'm usually working on a process of some sort. In other words, I've spoken this out. I go to seminars and workshops. So a lot of times I've already tested this out in front of an audience. The fictional stuff actually scares me a little bit because there's no business process behind it. I won't be testing it in front of an audience. I'm flying without a net, but perhaps, and I'm just taking a flyer here, but perhaps as you stepped into sort of a more, I hope you don't mind, maybe, where's your book fit on the bookshelf? Let me get that from you instead of
Right.
me.
It's going to be there alongside the books on the psychology shelf, on the spirituality shelf, on the health and wellness shelf. It fits in a couple of different ways, just depending on kind of what you're looking for and what you want from it. So those words are literally on the book itself. They put on the back of the book the categories that it's on, and it's sort of each of those fields. You could find it on those shelves.
Yeah. Well, as a business guy, I want to drag your book over to general business, but that's for another
Be my
conversation.
guest.
Okay, let's carve into your writing routine a little bit more. Okay, do you have a daily writing routine? How do you go about it once you cut the ribbon and start the process?
Yeah. For me, it's extremely project dependent. If I'm starting a novel, I start with a planning process rather than with so-called pantsing process. Pantsing being when you just jump in and write and write and write, and you don't know where you're going. I'm much more of a planner. So when I'm starting a novel, I will definitely start with notes and planning and ease my way into a beginning and some early scenes and lots of thinking. When I'm deep into a novel, then I will have a more steady writing habit because I'm really in the thick of it. I think I know where I'm going. So that's one sort of end of the spectrum. But I write a weekly Substack, and that's essay, nonfiction essentially, or confessional, or personal opinion, however you want to categorize it. And that's got an entirely different rhythm. I just really have to come up with an idea that I want to run with, and I sit down and develop it and kind of bang it out in a couple hours. So for me, it's really dependent on the project, what form it's taking, how much urgency I think I have with it. But I do try to make time to write something just about every day, whether that's nonfiction essay, short story, or something else.
Yeah. I sometimes refer to that as ring work, almost like a boxer, just kind of getting in the ring and throwing some jabs and sparring a little bit. For me, it's a blog. I write a weekly blog and been doing it for 16 years, and also a journal. Do you journal at all?
I do not. And I think I do not, I never had that habit, but I think what you could say is that my weekly Substack is the equivalent of a very polished journal entry in that I really am sharing personal observations and some vulnerabilities, which is a new thing for me to be doing. And every week I wonder, am I crossing a line I don't want to cross? And, readers tell me, no, it's great. We want even more, which I have to think about. So I think that's my version of journaling, which is this weekly Substack, which actually is called Doubt Monster, because the Substack is wrestling with all of these things that are swirling around creativity, productivity, anxiety, doubt, what culture does to us in its expectations about, rewards and productivity. And so I'm constantly diving into those things.
Yeah. And you know what I want people to who are listening to remember? I'm a stickler for everybody has their own style. So
Yeah.
it's not like, well, okay, so that's the Amy way, that's the way I've got to do it. No. Now that
No.
I've said
Right.
that, I'm going to go against my words and tell you that I do have an opinion. And my opinion is I really feel that, particularly for a new writer, if somebody's listening and has 20 books, you don't need our help. But for a new writer, I don't know how you write a book without an outline. It's not what's the word I'm trying to come up with? It's not a straitjacket. It's, it breathes, it expands, it contracts, but
Right.
at least it gives us a direction. Because, Amy, the moment you became an author, you became someone who was approachable by people who would tell you, I always wanted to be an author. And typically they were missing two things. One, a book hadn't found them yet. They were looking for a book, but it hadn't found them. And
Hmm.
two, I'm always concerned about their writing process of just sort of sitting down and writing a book. For
Right.
me, I don't think a new writer can pull that off. But I don't want to go against my own words, which is to each their own. We all have their own style.
Right.
I'm just
Well,
betting on an outline.
yeah. I agree with you. In fact, I was writing about this very thing last week as part of I'm an author accelerator certified book coach, and one of the main tools in the author accelerator book coaching world is called the Blueprint for a Book. It's an extraordinary tool. It's codified by Jenny Nash in 3 different books for 3 different genres, and it is really one of the best ways, even for a new writer, to learn how to use not just outlines, but other ways of structuring and understanding the point of your book without taking away from the writing that you want to do. This is not, it's not like you have to dive into outlining and then you don't get to write. Not at all. These things are complementary. And I always say that any outlining process, if you're diligent about it, is incredibly liberating for you as a writer because it is helping you to see the way forward so that you can write strong scenes that lead one to the next and so that you can help a reader see where that book is really going and you understand as an author where the book is really going. With the prevalence now of so much self-publishing where people can basically completely captain their own fate in terms of bringing a book into the world.
Right.
I see a huge number of writers who don't go through these processes. They really just sit and write and get all the words out, and then they consider themselves done and they press publish, essentially.
Right.
And without taking anything away from the joy that this may bring the folks who are doing this, the truth is these are often not good books. They're not well written because they don't have the structure and the thought and the planning behind them to really give the reader a very meaningful and satisfying experience. It's an unbelievably complex, difficult craft, writing. And if you haven't written, you don't yet appreciate how difficult it is to do well. And that's understandable because we all have to start somewhere. But it is worth taking time to try and learn some fundamentals of the craft, I think.
Yeah. And I'm smiling because I'm thinking, oh, I forgot. I'm talking to somebody who teaches people how to write books.
Yeah.
So I've got a subject matter expert with me. And to your point, I remember my last book that was accepted by a publisher, and it was this. I bounce around on the different publishers, but this one has got two of my books. I remember my editor saying, I've got bad news for you. We've decided we want to publish this book. So he said, so get ready because you've got months ahead of, and I was laughing, but
Right.
that is the reality. The good news is we've got this thing going, and the tough news is got a lot of work ahead of you. Even though
Yeah.
we think we have a manuscript that's done, boy, there's a lot of pieces that go into not just the manuscript, but
Yes.
everything around it.
Right. And you know what they say, writing is revision. Writing is revising. I botched the punchline. Writing is revising. And it's really very, very true. I mean, I just taught a workshop last night, which is about writing a second draft and trying to make it stronger, better, and deeper than your first draft. And there's a lot of technique that can go into this, which is one of the things that I teach. But it's so tempting to think that when you type the end at the end, it's done, and it's often not. It's often really kind of just the beginning.
Right. And that's what my editor was basically reminding me, like, you think you're done?
You're not.
We're just getting started. Uh, when you're writing, do you have a particular place you prefer to write?
Yes, I am such a creature of habit. In answer to that question, I read about these amazing writer retreats all the time, and they're all over the world, right? I mean, you could be in New Mexico, you could be in Italy, you could be in Greece, they're everywhere. And I read these descriptions and I try and picture myself in this beautiful, beautiful place in some gorgeous, like old farmhouse, and it's all amazing. And then I think, I can't write there. I need my familiar surroundings where I'm not going to be captivated by, the new scenery or that I'm not tempted to go out and do touristy things. So the long way to answer is that I sit at the end of my dining room table with my laptop. I keep things pretty neat and tidy, but I've got a notepad next to me because I have long to-do lists. And that is really where I write just about everything unless I'm on an airplane and I have a burst of inspiration, but it's mostly really at the end of my dining room table.
You ready for this, Amy? My first two books, 100%, every single word was written in the air. I travel a lot,
I
deliver
believe it.
seminars. I had trouble writing at home, but boy, I like that white noise and
Yep.
that basically no internet. And I just was, and the important thing I think we're getting across here is whether it's the end of your dining room table or up in the air or wherever it is, once you train yourself to that position,
Right.
the mind begins to prepare for it. It's like, oh boy, for me, it was like, we are now loading the plane. My mind would be going, okay, here we go. It's art. It's like getting ready to run a race. It knows.
Absolutely. The first novel that I wrote to prove to myself that I could write a novel was a young adult novel back in, I forget now, like 2006 or 7 maybe. I was commuting to Washington D.C. from where I live in Baltimore. I wrote the vast majority of that book on the train. For exactly the reason you're saying. I just whipped out my laptop. I had about 50 minutes, and if I wasn't going to take a nap, which I did a lot, I would just work on this story, and I had a perfect amount of time to just sort of get some pages done.
Oh, what a perfect way to do that. By the way, you're going to the wrong retreats. The Barrett Kohler, which is one of my publishers, runs a retreat, and we don't write a word. Nobody's there writing. We're collaborating. We're going for deep dives. We'll bring in publicists. We'll bring in different
Mhm.
marketing professionals. So it's more of an educational retreat with fun too. Now, I'm not really at a retreat to sit down and write. Too many
Right.
distractions for me there.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah.
All right. And speaking of distractions, For you, what's the most challenging part of the writing process?
What isn't challenging? I mean, getting started, I find getting started very challenging because I have to find my own this little equilibrium moment, which for me, and it is a deeply personal decision, when I feel I understand the story I want to tell well enough to start. And I don't start until I do know that. And so that's a process. And so I have to step to that moment. I'm in the middle of mentally outlining a possible new book, new novel, and these little moments are coming to me about what it's about or what happens and who's in it and how it starts. I can tell that when the idea starts to stick, if it gets sticky, then, oh, I think I really want to write this. I let it live there for a while, just in my head to see if I really want to write it. So I do find it challenging to know when that moment has arrived that I'm really ready to begin. I think the other thing that's so challenging for almost everyone who's ever written a novel is what we call the mushy middle, because you get a couple 10, 20, 30,000 words out and things feel like they're going great. And you're approaching more or less the middle of the book in a, let's say, a 75,000 word book. You're like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's working. I'm not sure where it's going. I kind of know where I want it to end. I don't know how I'm going to get there. And that's a really, really challenging place to be. And it's an extremely common place for writers to get stuck. Writers give up. Writers have written themselves into a corner. They haven't used appropriate planning tools to sort of figure out the scope of the whole thing. And sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board. That is very challenging.
Right.
I'd say the other really challenging moment is when the minute the ink is dried, so to speak, on that first draft, and then you go, oh no, this is terrible. You're like the elation wears off. You're like, oh no, 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 this is probably really bad. And then you have that moment.
Oh, it's funny. I never had that moment, but I've had the other moment. Have you ever abandoned a manuscript?
I have not abandoned. I'm thinking. I've done very, very detailed outlines on books I then did not write, and I did abandon one novel that I was getting pretty deep into, and I did abandon it, and that was the rare case. But I've learned my lesson from that. I'm not going to start something unless I feel I can commit to writing it, and I really want to. And because I have notes and notes and notes on books that I did start and lost interest in, and I don't want to lose interest in my work. I have to love it.
Exactly. It's to me, it's like one of my children. We do the best we can. We send them out in the world, and if we've done our best, then I'm happy with wherever the book goes. But when we haven't done our best, we have to live with that, and we've got our
Yeah,
name tied to it,
yeah.
and it's tough. How involved are you in the marketing of your books?
Well, I don't think there's hardly an author on the planet today who can afford not to be involved in the marketing of their books. I mean, I have an older friend who's been very well published for many, many decades now, and the whole industry changed on him. He didn't used to have to do a thing except turn in his manuscript, and his big publisher took care of everything for him. And now they want him to do, social media or this or that, and he's like, I don't want to do that. This is not who I am. So the industry has changed a great deal, and I am very involved. I will arrange my own bookstore signings. I'm very active on social media, but I'm not in sell mode. I don't do that because it doesn't work. It's not who I am. And trying to sell a book on social media doesn't sell a book. But I'm very engaged with lots of content and lots of conversations on social media. And when my book can find its way into those conversations, that's fine. So I am very involved, and I have a publisher now who's a real partner to me in with the Doubt Monster book, and he and I have been done tremendous amounts of brainstorming about how to pitch and position this book in different ways, and I've been working on that extremely hard.
I ask you that question because I agree with your answer. But we got to wake up a lot of authors right now. First of all, don't blame the publishers. They either get you engaged or they're not going to be in business. We have to partner with our
Yes.
publishers.
Yes.
And so don't look at it as a bad thing. It's just what it is. But you know that I put on a program for the Writers Center, a book marketing program, which couldn't draw one attendee, and there are no other programs there until I renamed it Book Marketing on a Budget. Then I was able to attract Some people, but I would say every other time that program is put on, we don't field a class uh, because so many authors don't want to get involved with the marketing of their books. And folks, we have to be involved. I like what you said, Amy. We don't have to be, if you don't like to sell, don't sell. There are many
Well,
other ways to market that
yeah.
book.
Rob, I think I diagnosed this problem a while ago, and I think my diagnosis is fairly accurate. The problem is that the way book marketing is sort of presented to authors in the broadest sense is it leads an author to think that they have to do about 1.5 million different things. The perception is that you need to be on, just for argument's sake, 6 social media channels, write 3 blogs, contribute to these newsletters, go find a podcast, and go, start build your mailing list. The message is that you've got to do 30,000 things. You've got to do them fast. You've got to do them all, almost all at once. You've got to do them all really well. This is not accurate or meaningful advice. And so a lot of authors pull back, understandably. These are writers, after all. These are people who want to sit in a quiet room and, put words on the page. And so what I always say is find one thing that you can tolerate or actually like doing. If, like me, you love podcast conversations, I love it. I've done dozens of them. I love this process. If you like that, you can go in that direction and you can let a lot of these other things just leave them by the wayside. If you're more the kind of person where you like to write a blog and just share your thoughts and put that up on your website, do that. And we should not think that I'm on a real soapbox because I feel strongly about this. We should not think that social media, that being on Instagram or being on Facebook or being on Blue Sky, or I don't do X anymore, but that being on these places is somehow an answer to your prayers or somehow tantamount to having your book seen and read. It is not. It is not. It is a tool. It can be used well, it can be used not well, and it can be ignored, and you can find success in other ways. We've blown it up out of proportion and we've turned it into something that it's not. We've given social media power that it often doesn't actually have. It just looks like it does. And so writers can participate in the marketing of their books by finding the tools and the processes and the kind of community that makes them feel happy and comfortable and satisfied and pursue that and don't do all the other things.
Oh, well, stay on that soapbox as long as you want. That is almost word for word my speech. I tell people when I'm working with them, I'm going to give you 35 different ideas. I have 35 listed ideas, of which I once you find one or two, but own it. For me as a
Exactly.
business author, it's
Right.
LinkedIn. And so that's what I own. And I'm comfortable there. And
Right.
I'm active, but I know how it works. I know what I'm doing. I'm
Right.
not an Instagram guy. I'm not,
Right.
I'm an X
Right.
person, sort of, not
Right.
really. I
Right.
accidentally, I don't really care about it. That's what I mean in terms of owning that. That doesn't
Right.
sound like owning it. Own
Agreed.
it, but don't be
Agreed.
afraid of it and just
Right.
keep looking until you find one. But then
Thing.
don't be
Right.
casual. Be the best at it. Try and be the best at it.
Well, yeah, and let me add to that. First of all, I'm also very active on LinkedIn, and I find it a very satisfying community. To me, it's the social media where grown-ups go, for the most part. I think it's important to stress as well that it's not about pushing yourself, promoting yourself, just talking about you or your book. It's about trying to find ways to actually have meaningful engagement and conversations. Maybe you're sharing meaningful content with people that helps other people. I do quite a bit of that. Maybe you're really just commenting and questioning things that other people are sharing, which gets you into a conversation. But it's about still being yourself. And I know we overuse this word authentic because social media is about so much posturing, but it is still about being you, the real you. You don't have to be a fake you. You could find me on TikTok and I'm very real. I'm this sort of unphotogenic person sharing writing tips that are very useful. And that's what I did on TikTok for over a year. I didn't dance. I didn't film any cats. I didn't cook. I didn't show
You
my
weren't a
food. I didn't,
dancing writer, none of that.
none of that. None
You'd
of
own
that.
that space if
It's
you
like
did.
it's like writers, here's 3 ways to do X, and these are like
Yeah,
genuinely useful things. And that was me. That was me being me in
right.
a social media environment, right? And I was very comfortable with it. I did it a lot until I stopped. But yeah, I mean, to your point, if the list of 35, find the one or two, and then be yourself doing that thing. You don't have to be fake.
Yeah, yeah. And Amy, I don't want to forget at the end, we're coming down the home stretch. So How do you coach people and help people to write their manuscripts, correct? Did I get that right? What
Yes.
exactly are you doing? Yeah.
Right. So I am a book coach specializing in working with nonfiction writers and some memoir writers. And so I am a guide and a champion and also an accountability partner. And I offer my clients very specific guidance and direction on helping them to bring an idea to fruition. A lot of my clients do start with an idea. In fact, I have a client right now. We've been working together for well over a year. He had a vague idea from a book. This week, we polished a proposal for him that is ready to go into the marketplace. It's a huge accomplishment. It's very difficult to do this on your own. So I provide a lot of guide rails and a lot of support to authors who are trying to find their way to structure a book. So that's a lot of what I do as a book coach and
Good.
sort of get them
How
on the
do
right
people
track.
get a hold of you?
They can go to amywrites.live.
amywrites.live. Okay, good. All right. I wanted to make sure we got that in there. All right. Last question for you, I think. Depends on how you answer it. What advice would you give an aspiring writer? Okay. Somebody that's thinking about taking this leap. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. There's so much advice we can offer. I know that, but what's
Right,
coming first to mind? Just cherry pick what just popped out of your head there.
right. The very first thing is you got to be prepared to handle rejection if you want to write. If you're going to go forward, you will hear no a lot. Your work will not be picked up by everybody. You will not publish everything that you write, and people will be critical. You need to know how to take that on board and not take it personally. And you need to study your craft and be patient with learning it. It is a steep learning curve, and you need to be patient with yourself to become a better writer.
Well said. Well said. I think that's it. And I'm trying to think how I would answer the question, and I want to find a different avenue. So I just think it's don't. I have a little poem. I don't even know if it's a poem. It's a saying, but I keep here. Thinking about writing is not writing. Planning to write is not writing. Researching to write is not writing. Writing is writing. And way back at the beginning of our conversation, you said something that really resonated with me, which was just the fact that you are in the ring, that you are writing, whether it's a book, whether it's whatever it is, you're exercising that muscle. And
Right.
so don't be afraid, folks. And also just keep exercising, keep
Exactly.
exercising the muscle and find a
Exactly.
book coach, find somebody, if it's your first time, of all the things you listed, also accountability partner, be
Yes.
accountable. I met
Yeah.
somebody one time who had a button, said, ask me about my book. And I love giving that. I don't have those buttons, but if I had them, I give them to everybody who told me they're going to write a book. And when they go, well, what if I put that on? I'm going to have to write the book. That's right. You're going to put it on. And number two, when they ask you, if you stop keeping it a secret, don't be afraid, you'll be surprised where those conversations can lead sometimes from a
Yeah.
stranger at the
True.
CVS line who
Hmm.
says, oh, that's interesting because my uncle, and it pushes an idea that you wouldn't have found. So let's
Right.
not keep it a secret. That would be my approach. Anyway, I have to dive into, I get lonely over here. All right, Amy, you were terrific.
Thank you, Rob.
I want to thank you for being on the show. Learned a lot. We know how to get a hold of Amy too. And we even learned a few things about doubt. So it was a home run today. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Rob.
We'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's guest author, we'd love you to rate, review, and share this episode with others. If you'd like more information on today's guest or the Maryland Writers Association, please visit our website at marylandwriters.org. You can also hear a brief history of the Maryland Writers Association by listening to episode 0,